Welcome to Healers with Humor.
Where healing meets heart and a whole lot of vulnerability.
We're your hosts, Candice and Shelly, two healers navigating life, love, and all the messy moments in between.
Because we believe that healing isn't just about crystals and meditation. It's about embracing the chaos, learning from the challenges, and finding joy in the journey.
Each week, we'll share real stories, insightful conversations, and maybe even a few awkward truths just to help you navigate your own healing path.
And guess what? This season, we're bringing in special guests to share their wisdom and inspire even more connection.
So grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, or just settle right in and get ready for laughs, lessons, and a whole lot of light. This is Healers with Humor. Welcome back, Bright Lights, to Healers with Humor, Season 2, Episode 10, Life Path, Purpose, and Side Adventures. What do you need to know? I'm Candice.
And I'm Shelly.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We are back with a very interesting conversation that we'll jump into in just a bit. But of course, we have a candle and a card and a favorite thing for the episode. So let's talk about that first. And of course, the candle is always for me, from Soul Love with Lindsay. And it is the candle intention of Serenity. And so the mantra is, I am the stillness that lies within. And so in Serenity, right, we allow the worries of the world to melt away. We quiet the mind so that we may listen to the inner truth, that inner knowingness that has been there all along. And that plays directly into what we're going to talk about today. And the card of the episode is from the Sacred Forest Oracle by Denise Lynn. And I really chuckled when this card came out because it was called the Bee Spirit. And if you've been following along, we've had a couple of conversations about bees and how they've been very present for me in my journey. And so the bee spirit is about prosperity. And so intuitively, we are the message that I got around this was be willing to put the time and energy, be willing to put in the time and energy. Any of your goals will be attained. Your efforts will pay off. Bees work together. So also consider whose energy aligns with yours and how you might collaborate to achieve your desires. So again, it really dovetails into the conversation today around path and purpose. And then my favorite thing right now, my husband and I are obsessed with Cook Unity. So I think I had mentioned in episode 1 that we have these meals delivered, chef-inspired meals. And it's through Cook Unity, which is a national company. But they are prepared and delivered right to my door, and they're fresh. They're not frozen. There's a huge selection. We don't get bored. There's enough food for my husband because he has a bigger appetite than I do. And we just love having the ability to have fresh meals. It's way cheaper than eating out, even for us both to have, a meal. We'd still spend more than double if we went out to eat. So we're obsessed with that. So if you're feeling bored or stuck in your food routine, you can check out a code that I'll put into the notes for Cook Unity, and you can enjoy some meals to your front door as well. All right, Shelly, what do you have for us today?
All right. So for me, I only had a favorite thing today, but I'm a huge reader. Most of the time, there's a book on my coffee table, maybe 3, lined up in which order I'm going to read them. But the one I just finished that I really enjoyed is by Rachel Hollis, and it's called What If You Are the Answer? And the other part of that title is, and 26 other questions that just might change your life. So it was really a book that kind of challenged me to really ask myself some questions. Some I had, some I hadn't.
Yeah.
But to really determine things that were important to me, things that weren't important to me, things I was focusing on that maybe I shouldn't have been, and maybe what I should be focusing on.
Yeah.
So I always love a good book. So I'm really
Nice.
enjoying that and diving back into some of my answers a little deeper.
Good. Well, and I think even if we've answered the question once, right? Sometimes when you've done a little bit more healing or, you've had a little bit more experience, sometimes that answer can change, right? So it's good to go back and ask ourselves those questions again. So that's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we are going to start talking about path and purpose. And for me, path and purpose are connected, but they're not necessarily the same. So for me, my path or your path in general, right, is the course that was mapped out before you arrived here. It's the energetic blueprint, right? The potential journeys your soul can take here in this lifetime. And you have the free will to choose how you're going to walk that path. And for purpose, for me, it's what you're actually here to do, right? It's the calling of your soul, what it came here to do and to achieve in this lifetime, in this incarnation. It's not always a job or a role, right? It's the deeper reason behind why you're here and what you're meant to do and how you show up in the world. So, in a way, your purpose guides your path, and your path is what helps you live into your purpose.
Oh.
What what are you thinking around path and purpose, Shelley? How are those the same or different than my thoughts?
So I love that, when we were talking about favorite things, you kind of led right into what I was gonna say, and this is how we grow and we change. So,
Mhm.
if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I think I would tell you I was absolutely obsessed with trying to figure out my path and my purpose.
Yes.
And here's my disclaimer for this episode and that, right, I don't think that your life is supposed to be so centered around that path or purpose anymore, right? It kind of comes along as you're, living the life that you want to be living, right?
Yeah.
Enjoying that every day, finding, joy like we've talked about, and the thing understanding yourself and the things that bring you joy.
Mhm.
So when I think about the path for me, it's been more about the healing that I do along the way.
Mhm.
Um, and part of what has happened for me on that path is really, recovering who I was supposed to be or who I am,
Yeah.
right? I mentioned the part about really what brings you joy, right? Really getting to know yourself. But a lot of that I think is also about what is allowing you to be living your best life,
Mhm.
right? So much of what we do is just going through the motions, right? Getting up, brushing my teeth, going to work, coming back,
Yeah.
exercising, making dinner, watching TV, going to bed, right? The
Yeah.
same. And so I think it's definitely about more than that. When I think about purpose, I think we're very similar of thinking where it's about what you're passionate about, right?
Mhm.
For me, and it's kind of why my business is Find Your Light, right? Getting to know who you are and then finding out really what lights you up.
Mhm.
So that, what brings spark to you, right? What makes you smile? For me, I'm a hummer. So if I'm humming, I know I'm happy. So the things that kind of light you up, to me, that's your purpose, right?
Yep.
Where that passion is, where it takes you, that piece is your purpose. So as we're talking about it, right, and we are pretty similar in how we were viewing path and purpose.
Mhm.
Um, so does everyone have a path or purpose in this lifetime? And do you have some ways that you would suggest people try and figure that out?
Yeah, I think every single person has a path and a purpose in this lifetime. You're not just here by accident, right? You're here with intention, even if you're not really sure what that intention is yet, like you said, right? There's lots of things that we experience in this life that we may or may not think are our path or our purpose, but they've all happened for a reason and are bringing us closer to where we're supposed to be, even if we don't know it when it's happening. And like you talked about in your book, one of the best ways to start uncovering your path is to look at your life path number. Right. So Shelley talks a lot about this. And in her book, and it can offer really incredible insight to your soul's blueprint. It talks about your strengths and your character traits and potential challenges, and really where you can learn to contribute, right, to your own path and purpose. Later this season, we actually have a numerologist that will be chatting with us on even a deeper level around what a life path number is and numerology and all that fun stuff. But another powerful tool that we talked about in episode 4 when it comes to path and purpose is Meredith McGowan really shared about how your birth chart holds clues to your purpose, especially when you explore the placements. And we've talked about this a lot, right? North Node and Chiron. These really show, right, where our growth is, where our soul wants to take us and is craving what the healing is for us in this world. So that's another way people can look at it. And while all of those tools are helpful, right, sometimes it's just about getting really quiet, right? And reading a book and asking yourself questions that maybe you asked yourself 5 years ago. What lights me up, right? What's the what feels meaningful? What feels like love? Your purpose doesn't always have to come in with a lightning bolt. I think sometimes we think that it's gonna be this, like, intense and crazy, experience, and sometimes it's just life unfolding, and sometimes we have to take a quiet moment to allow it to unfold. Um, and so, yeah, it's like little breadcrumbs, but they're always there. So how do you determine if you're on your path and aligned with your purpose?
So we've already talked about joy, and I definitely think, what makes you happy, right? What like lights you up is a really big part of it, right?
Well, and
Certainly you
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you for a second. I also think, and I want you to talk a little bit more about this, we talk about joy a lot, and I don't think that everybody really fully thinks about that, right? There's not a lot of conversation at, the water cooler about what brings you joy today, right? And so I really am gonna, challenge our listeners, to all you bright lights, to really, think about what brings you joy. And I'll stop talking now.
no, actually, I appreciate you doing that. As somebody who sat down to make a list, and right,
Yeah.
I kind of laughed as I it was joy was actually an easier list for me than like play was,
Yeah.
or than some of the other ones have been. Joy was easier. Like, so I do think that it is really valuable if you understand whether it's what makes me happy, what brings me joy, what makes me feel at peace. I'll just say whichever ones that you find challenging, right? Even play. Play is a much shorter list for me
Yeah.
in that it was really challenging for me to say, you know, what is playing for me?
Mhm.
Right? What does that look like for me as an adult, right? We've talked about that in some of the other episodes.
Yes.
Um, but my body has some pretty obvious signals, right? I talked about the humming earlier and I've talked about that before. If I hum and I catch myself humming, I know I'm in a pretty good mood, right? And I think that maybe your signals look different.
Mhm.
Maybe you relax. Maybe you laugh more. Whatever that is, right? Paying attention to those signals that your body is sharing with you allows you to put more of that in your life. And actually, in the last couple months, I had a weekend with a free couple of days, and I said, I really just want to make sure I bring some joy.
Mm.
So I went to my joy list, and I didn't like say, okay, these are the 5 that I want to do, but I just
Yeah.
reminded myself, right? I love a good picnic. I don't care if it's outside of a Sonic. I don't care if it's in a car
Yeah.
with a Happy Meal. I don't care if it's actually at a park or on a blanket, right? But I like to eat outside.
Okay.
And so I made a point to say, I really want to bring joy into this weekend and do quite a bit of that, right? And, you know, what's the worst thing that happens if you're doing a few things that bring you joy, right?
Right. Exactly.
Um, yeah, but curiosity is the other one, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's somebody says, a healing modality or a word or something that you read something and it sends you down a rabbit hole,
Yeah.
right? Following that curiosity, right? You find out what you're passionate about, you find out what you enjoy.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things that, or at least for me, flow, right? Not
Mm.
fighting against going with the flow. And so while that one, I was to say was a little elusive for me for a while in that, when I pictured going with the flow, it felt like somebody was being beat up by the waves.
Mhm.
It took me quite a while, right, to either figure out that I just didn't have to do something harder, try harder,
Yeah.
or get beat up by the waves, but really understand going with the flow, right? Riding the waves, riding the energy of the movement forward.
Yep.
Um, Certainly as I think about spiritual path and trying to understand that you hit on, a lot of the big ones that I think about, right? The life path numbers. The other one that I've been paying attention to is where Saturn resides and which house in your astrology chart.
Girl.
Um, that that one, particularly, right, Meredith, in preparing for that episode, right, and the weeks coming after, it was
Yeah.
great because astrology is challenging for me, and I that encouraged me to dig into it before
Mhm.
and after, right? Dig back into the, north and south node as well as the Chiron and just say, you know, does this make sense for me? And so much of it does, right? And I don't think it always does. Maybe it's not a lifetime you need to focus on astrology, but
Yeah.
they can be helpful clues as
Mhm.
to um, who you have been in the past
Mhm.
and what your soul is headed toward.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah, I recently started looking at some more of the Saturn stuff, and man, oh man, depending on where that is in your chart and where it's transiting, right,
Mhm.
is what is impacting you now. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. So how do you start to really understand what your purpose is, right? So we know that the path, may be longer or shorter for others. But how do we really start understanding purpose?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've hit a lot on, touched quite a few of them, right? We've talked about listening to your body, right? And we've said that over and over. We've talked a
Mhm.
lot about self love. We've talked about human design and what is your yes, right?
Yeah.
And I think chasing those, right? We've talked about joy and curiosity and what makes you excited.
Mhm.
And I do think for me, it'll be interesting to see if it feels similar for you. But again, I think it's about your body responses. A day that you loved,
Mhm.
um, a day that you look back on and you go, man, I really love that day. And there's if you dive deep into it, there's probably not, I don't know, they're not huge things. It's
Yeah.
just I went to the beach and it made me feel really peaceful, right? I heard a great
Mhm.
song that I loved. And so I just think chasing more of that, and
Yeah.
that can be a really good direction.
Mhm.
So when I think about paths, what if I don't like the path, right? Or it's too hard? You mentioned that we could choose not to follow it. Um,
I've been this has been really a lot for me lately. This
I think it's been a lot for both of us.
yeah, there are times when the path feels so hard you just want to give up, right?
Mm,
And I literally had a moment the other night where I just wanted to burn it all down because I was so frustrated. So, specifically for me, and again, I said this earlier, your purpose is not always your job, right? For me, it is. My purpose here is what I'm doing for my work. It hasn't
mm,
always been that way, right?
mm,
I always knew that I wanted to help people. I didn't have back in the day, I didn't know exactly what that looked like. So I went into human resources thinking, right, I'm gonna help people. And I did for sure. But helping people in a new and different way now, right, through energy healing. Um, and it's just running your own running your own business. And yeah, all of the things that go with it, and then the actual work that you get to do with people is amazing. But sometimes I just get really frustrated. And so I just really let myself feel it. I had a full-on tantrum,
Mhm.
and that's not really like me. And so, yeah, the energy, the full moon this week, was a lot. But then I leaned on my people, right? And that's we talk a lot about community. And all right, I leaned on my friends and my husband. Um, and then I really got the guidance that I needed. So I have a friend, Nicole, who does tarot reading. So her company is Rise with Me. Um, and we have a standing, like, every 6 weeks, she does a tarot reading for my business, and that happened to be on, the day after I had my meltdown. So it was perfectly timed, and
Perfect time.
we did a six-month view of my business, and so it really got me centered, right? It got me like, I was over my tantrum by that point, and, what she said and, a bunch of other people said is, "The world needs you. You can't you can't burn it all down." And I was like, "I know, but it's really hard sometimes, right? Like, your purpose, even if you know what it is, sometimes it's hard executing it." Um, and so, yeah, there's a lot of surrender that happens with all of that. And it took me a long time to figure out what my purpose was, even when I was, going through the midst of my medical leave and my corporate job and, really trying to figure that out. But like the bee spirit from the Oracle deck, right? It's not about just pushing forward. It's about assessing your energy and remembering the power of collaboration. So, right, I allowed myself to feel my feelings, which is not always something that I do great. And I collaborated, right? I talked about what was frustrating me. I shared it with people who I trusted, and I received really good guidance. And so I was really appreciative. But yeah, you have to be vulnerable, right? To be able to do that, admitting when you're struggling, letting others support you, right? That's part of the path too. And sometimes it is too hard, and sometimes you just have to take a break. And get that, go into that stillness and see what the guidance is, ask for the guidance. And then trust that if something needs to shift, it will, right? A new path will open up. It doesn't always have to be hard, but it can be if we're not listening. Uh, so yeah, this week has been an interesting week for me for sure. Um, and so I just said it, right? It doesn't always have to be hard, but it can be. So in your experience and walking your path or just in general, um, how do you feel about that? Is it supposed to be easy? Is it supposed to be hard?
You know, as it seems like if you're listening and if you're in the flow, that it should be easy.
Mhm.
That said, I don't feel like too much of it has been a cakewalk.
Yeah.
And I say that because if I think about, um, working through the healing of childhood trauma
Mhm.
or deprogramming to get back to who you were either meant to be or who you want to be. I think all of that, right, is somewhat out of your comfort zone because it's asking you to assess and reevaluate and redirect. And there are lessons and learning and experiences and for me, right, my spiritual awakening and healing journey started with, do I want to get divorced, right?
Mhm.
Which in order to, I'll say, get me on my path, it started with something that was very uncomfortable, unpleasant, sad,
Mhm.
um, to get me to where I am today,
Yeah.
right? Which I've done a lot. I understand myself so much better today.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, headed toward living a more intentional life and really saying, how do I make changes that target a life I want to live?
Mhm.
Well, if you're going to do something right outside of the typical what we're taught is what we're shooting for,
Yes.
a house, a family, a dog, a white picket fence, that does look very different and it is out of the tradition. And it is um I'm not gonna say a lot of people don't walk that path because I know so many people that are walking that path,
Yeah.
but it's a different path than the last 30 years what we've been taught to live.
Yeah.
So I do think that is a little bit, I'll just say more challenging, right? Whether even if it's only myself that it's challenging with, right? This is what I've been taught to want, and
Yeah.
now, oh, here's what I want, but to your point, right, some days it can feel harder for me, one of those big things is much of life has rewarded me of being in my very masculine energy,
Mhm.
where I've been really asked for the last 2 years and continue to be asked to do it more is really working from feminine energy,
Yes.
which is does not come natural. I have to be very intentional about it. And I have to really think long and hard sometimes about what it is or how I might do something in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, and to the point, right? Sometimes I just wanna be doing because at least I feel like I'm doing something and not being, and that can feel more challenging than the actual action of doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Owning your own business, is much more, you need both, right? You need the, divine feminine and masculine. Um, but yeah, these days the divine feminine is definitely asking for us to be in more flow. And to your point, I find it really hard too. I've definitely been rewarded being in my more masculine energy and the action, right? It's really hard um to not want to continuously, create something or have a new offer or do another post, right? Like it feels like there's always something to do specifically, right? When your purpose is your job. So sometimes it can be hard to really sit back and be like, oh, yes, I'm in my feminine and I will allow things to flow. Because that's just not right. To your point, what we've been rewarded for. So yeah, I totally get that.
So, all right, you mentioned, that maybe we take side adventures. Can we take detours or breaks? Maybe both of us
Breaks.
need a break or side adventures, right? Because you said, right, you get to choose whether or not you walk your path. I think some of us might take a longer route sometimes. I know I do.
Yeah.
I definitely have.
Uh, yeah. So, yes, you can absolutely do all the things, right? Detours, breaks, side adventures. And honestly, I think they're all essential. Let's be honest, right? I had a 44-year detour, right? I didn't fully wake up to my purpose until I was in my mid 40s. And even at that, it took a few years once I kind of, was on the path to really embrace my purpose. And so the path I was on before was fine, right? To your point, I checked the boxes, I did the things, but it wasn't illuminated, right? It didn't feel overly aligned. And now the path that I am on does feel lit up, right? I can see, the difference that I'm making when I'm working with people, in a much more significant way, right, than I did before. But it took time, and it took really stepping off of a path more than once, right? The one path didn't bring me to the exact place I needed to be, and I've absolutely taken breaks, probably not as many as I should. I actually feel like our anniversary is coming up, and we were going to go away, and we decided not to, but I blocked out that whole week, and we're just gonna do little things, right? We live in vacation land, so we're gonna do vacation land things.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so those are gonna be, little adventures. Um, but yeah, the magic really happens when we pause, right? And we get quiet. We've talked about that a ton. but really trying just not to force things, and just allowing things to be revealed. And what I find, and I know this happens for you too, is when you do allow that downtime, right? You do get the downloads, right? When we keep ourselves so busy all of the time, um, you don't create the space to be allowed to hear what needs to come through. And then, I love a good side adventure. Whether it's going to, right, a warrior goddess weekend with our friend Nicole, like I talked about in episode 5, or you coming down for a visit, right? We just had so much fun and we were able to relax. And, we, of course, did our, worked on each other like we always, always do. But that's what lights us up, right?
Yeah,
And that's
helping each
what,
other. Yeah.
yeah, that's what gives us joy. Exactly. So it's really just giving yourself permission to explore, um, and just not needing everything to be linear. In my very, logical corporate life, right, everything was really linear. It was very mapped out, right? You do these 5 tasks, you do these 15 tasks, you get good
Mhm.
at them, you excel, you go above your peers, you get promoted, right? That's just not really how things work all the time, especially in this world. So it's just not gonna be, a linear path. And yeah, that's how I feel about all of that. How about, what do you think what do you think our listeners need to know about what their path or their purpose is? So, not everyone, right, is on a spiritual journey. Not everyone is on a healing journey. But if they are, and they're listening to this episode, um, and they're trying to figure out what their path and their purpose is, um, what are some good tips for folks? And we've talked about a lot of them already, but
Yeah, I think some of the key ones that come to mind is, right, I'll just say my healing really started whenever I asked myself, "Is this how I wanna live the next 20 years?
Mhm.
How I've lived the last 20, is this how I wanna live the next 20?" And
Yeah.
the answer was, no,
No.
no, no,
Resounding
um,
no.
no. And what at this, after I answered that question,
Mhm.
then it's been up to me to make sure that 20 years from now, when I ask myself, "Am I happy with how the last 20 years have gone?"
Yeah.
I am fully responsible for the answer that I give myself to that question, right?
Yep.
So, am I doing things that I enjoy, spending time with people that bring me joy, right?
Mhm.
Or fill my cup, to your point, right? A weekend together and working on each other. Am I trying things that maybe I'm not going to be great at, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I chasing going down rabbit holes with curiosity, right? Am I living my life doing the things that bring me joy, right? Am I sitting in my car having, a McDonald's Happy Meal picnic if that brings me joy today, right?
Yeah.
Did I allow myself to do those types of things, or am I
Mhm.
regretting
Yeah.
how I've spent the last few years? Because I do think that that's pretty huge. And, one of our guests, the way that she phrased it, and I'm not quoting it word for word, but she essentially said, if it's not going how you want it to, right, you start again tomorrow, you
Mhm.
reset, you readjust,
Yeah.
you align with what you want and what's important to you, and then you move forward, right?
Yeah.
So each day we have that ability.
Mm.
And to me, right, as long as you're chasing, I don't want to say chasing the fun things, right? Because there's a lot of healing along the way. But
Yeah.
if you're chasing what you're curious about, if you're getting to know yourself, right, if you're being intentional about, you know, what lights you up and what makes you happy or what makes you hum,
Mhm.
how much could you possibly regret a year from now?
Yeah. Yeah. I think to your point, it's about being intentional, right? I, again, lived a very unintentional, unconscious life for the first 44-ish years.
Mm.
And when I started to really live more intentionally and really questioning, to your point, like what do I want in my life? I have the ability to bring in to my life whatever I want to bring in. And I'm choosing love and joy and curiosity and all of those things. Um, and that's a decision that I get to make every day, right? And sometimes, it's not logical, and sometimes the decisions that we make um, might not be what everybody else is doing, and that's okay, right? We have to make sure that we're making our decisions for us, and you just don't have to have it all figured out, right? It doesn't come, like I said, it's not that lightning bolt moment. It's things that get revealed over time, and as you continuously make those big or small steps towards what you're, how you want to live your life and what you want it to look like, um, then yeah, it starts unfolding a little bit easier. I was taking a class recently, and we were asked to write our eulogy, our own eulogy or our own obituary, which I thought was a very interesting exercise. And essentially, her guidance was, what do you want to be known for? Like, what's your legacy? And so it really, again, like like the questions in the book that you read, it really got me thinking about, wow, okay, all right. So if I make this list about what I want to be known for, then if I'm not currently doing it, I get to adjust my path and my plans to allow for those things to come in if they're not already here. So that was a really interesting exercise. But yeah, stay curious for sure.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, as always, this was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much. And of course, Bright Lights, we always want to hear from you and what you're thinking about your own path and your own purpose. And, if you have questions around what those things might be and need someone to help illuminate what those questions might be that you can ask yourself, you can always reach out to us, leave a comment. We're always happy to hear from you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Healers with Humor.
We hope that you found some laughs, a little light, and maybe even a few aha moments along the way today.
Remember, healing's a journey, not a destination, and you don't have to go it alone.
If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who could use a little healing and humor in their life.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review, and follow us on YouTube and any social media to stay connected with us.
Because we're definitely going to be sharing more wisdom, more laughs, and probably a little more oversharing next time.
Oh, you know it. Until then, take care of yourself, embrace the journey, and don't forget to laugh a little along the way.
All right, so see you next time on Healers with Humor.